Wim's session. Now, Wim, this was a fantastic session and we got some really great engagement from the audience, some fantastic stuff in here. So Microsoft, thank you for providing Wim to come along and tell us about how to get growth in our adoption.
I'm not really sure though, how do I follow the great Alan and announcements around 50% price cuts and MVP announcements? It's going to be hard to top all of that. And I don't even have a cats picture. It seems that having cats is kind of hot in this session. So let's move on from there maybe and forget I don't have any cats. So hello everyone, my name is Wim Coorvites. I'm a program manager on the Power Apps team, specifically in the Power Apps in Teams team, where I guess for about the last 2 years, and not just in Teams, but for Power Apps in general, I've looked after like growth for Power Apps. And so that kind of means that I'll be talking a little bit about what I've been doing for the last 2 years as a program manager and looking at how people are using Power Apps and how we grow that. But I'm going to cherry pick from there what also is useful for you and any other Power Apps builder out there to take into their own kind of toolkit on what can I do to improve my Power Apps, to make my Power Apps better as I'm thinking about adoption, because that's still key also when you're building apps for your users, even though they're employees, or even though you might think they're forced to use it, they might still find ways to not do it, like use the good old Excel file or use the good old paper or whatever it is they're falling back to. So that's a little bit about what we're going to do. Unfortunately, I have to say that it's kind of intro level. We have 30 minutes. So we're going to really talk about what that growth process really is about. Like, what is growth hacking? It's a very popular term, but it's really what is growth product management? What are typical metrics and analytics and insights you can use to really understand how your apps are being used and how you can improve them? And then we'll touch like very high level on technology, on what you can do to really get you there and get it improving. Like, that means also that there's a bunch of stuff we're not going to cover, unfortunately. I don't have a very concrete list of things you can do to improve the user adoption. Like, the hard work will still be you. I can give you the tools for your toolkit in your backpack, but you'll have to use them and apply them so that you can discover those elements you can leverage in your Power Apps and make that adoption better. There's obviously, beyond the things I'll talk about, which I would categorize growth management, there's other ways to improve adoption. There's change management. There's how you think about your user experience. There's many other things that can help. We're not going to touch upon those. And we're also not going to do a deep dive in, for example, Azure Application Insights or stuff like that, even though we'll use it. And I want to make sure that you get a bit of a flavor of what that can do for you as well. So with that being said, let's take a few steps back. It's actually a lot of steps back. We're going all the way back into 2010, actually, where it was Sean Ellis who defined like growth hacking for the first time. And Sean Ellis was really working in this startup world, really helping startups accelerate and grow. And whenever he felt he was ready and someone could take over his role, he needed to hire his replacement. And when he was writing that job description, he didn't find the right word for it. He was not looking for a traditional marketer, because they were looking at marketing budgets and expenses and conversions and like all these very big and expensive words. And he was really looking for someone who really wanted to just grow whatever means possible, so that could use the analytics, that could use an inexpensive, creative way to really help the product grow. And he also looked for someone who understood that products had evolved. Like, it was not anymore like this chair you went to buy somewhere in the store and then you took it home and that it's this. No, like, these products were connected and there was the internet. So that kind of evolved, and products could play an own role in their adoption. I think about how Facebook, how you can invite friends. So that's a way to grow the product. If you think about how Dropbox did it by really giving people free storage and how that kind of helped them accelerate growth. So that's kind of what that means on how products evolved and how really the internet played a role in that. If you start looking at, well, how do we start measuring that? There was this other person, Dave McClure, who defined metrics to see like, how are like organizations, how is my product, how is my application doing? And the acronym for all those metrics is actually R. So that quickly became dubbed as the PARROT metrics, and they stood for acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. Now, for us today, when we look at Power Apps, we're really looking at the product and what we can do as a maker for that product. We're really going to focus on those two, like the second and third one around activation, like how do I give my users a good first experience, but also following on experiences, and how do I make sure that they're coming back for more? So activation and retention, and how do we play that into like a Power Apps development or Power Platform solution in general. Now, if you then start to look at these things and these metrics, and you think about traditional ways of building apps, you kind of fall in this almost like I've researched this in a few articles, and many times you find this waterfall model of like, hey, you discover kind of what the problem is, you start designing, you develop, you test, you deploy, and then you go into maintenance and you make sure that the app is running fine and well. But something really important is missing here. If you think about being successful with your Power Apps, if you think about the traditional method here for any type of apps, I feel that there's a very important component missing here. And I've seen that some of you have been very active on chat. So maybe if you have an idea on what is missing here, like just type it into the chat, and I'll wait for maybe a few seconds and see if someone comes up, or if like it's a small group as well, if you'd like to come off mute and just yell like, hey, this is missing, then I'd like to hear that. I'll give us a second for that and see if someone takes the bait. No one? Okay, I'll give it away then. The thing which is really missing, in my opinion, user acceptance testing, yet it's coming close. Yeah, it's kind of maybe built into when you're going into deployment and developing and testing. Yes, there's that. But in user acceptance testing, Sharon, there's a really important word, and that's user. And it's kind of implicit in a way, but I'd like to make it very explicit. Like the users are so important. That's also when we think about Power Apps and growth hacking techniques, the user is key. Like the user is essential to everything in the end. So and it's more than just like this waterfall model, and then like we're in maintenance. If you think about growth hacking, it's typically about, okay, we have it in front of our users. Let's start to analyze now how our users are using the apps. So we're gaining some analysis and some insights from how they're using it. And then it goes to like, okay, so if we see certain gaps, like how people are dropping from the app, for example, you see they're all coming to the first page. They are there to create maybe a support case or maybe create a ticket. There's a certain incident they saw. There's like water in the hallway, or the temperature in my office is way too high and they want to log a ticket. If you look at some of the analytics and you see they're dropping somewhere in the app and they actually do not complete the logging of the ticket, that's kind of information you can get from analysis and the behavior of those people. And then you can start ideating about how can I improve that? What's the ideas to change this and to make sure that they're not dropping, or to make sure that they come back tomorrow to use the app again, depending on what type of app it is, of course. And so you go into ideation. With those ideas, you go to prioritization, like which of these ideas are we going to try out? You're going to prioritize them. There's like different techniques from that. A very common one is using ICE model. And you can also use that when you're considering like, hey, I'm going to build this Power app. What do I build first? I want to get it, in general, you want to get it in the hands of your users as soon as possible, because that's when you start learning, before like doing the entire thing end to end, and then only learning at the very end. You might have done stuff that they don't really like, or which could have been better, or which they didn't think it was that important. So as soon as you get that MVP out there, you can start thinking about IDs and prioritizing them. And the idea is that the model typically uses is an ICE model, ICE. So it stands for, whenever you think about a function or a feature, it's like, what's the impact this thing is going to have, or which we believe it's going to have? Because the second in ICE is C, stands for confidence. What's the confidence that this feature will really have the impact that we believe it will have? And then there's the effort. How much effort does it need to really build this capability, to build this feature, to build this possibility into Power Apps, and kind of use those three numbers to kind of define what do we do first, and what do we do second, and what do we do next, and then kind of start doing that. You can use it when you're building an app, but you can also use it when you start growth hacking an app, improving the app, improving the user adoption. Like there's probably a bunch of ideas, like prioritize them and then test them. Test them is in a way critical, is you want to make sure like, did my idea really work, yes or no? If you look at organizations like Microsoft and Google and many others like that are really applying growth hacking techniques, some of the like most successful ones have like 20 to 30 of these experiments that they're running per week. Just like it could be small tweaks, change of a sentence, and see like if one group performs now better than the other group, and then change the product that way. So that's certainly a way that you could also apply that to Power Apps. So where do we get those insights? Let's start making it a little bit more concrete here. So first, there's 3 areas. There's operational analytics, there's behavioral analytics, and then there's the feedback loop. So essentially that means like, how's the app performing? That's a typical things like performance, usage. Then how are my users using the app? Where do they get stuck? Do they get dropped somewhere? The example I gave with the person with the office, which was too hot, like, is he actually able to complete a certain process? And then what are the people really saying about those apps? And that's really the 3 places where you can get feedback. Now, before I continue, I want to check, does everyone still see my slide? Because I don't see it in Teams anymore. I want to make sure that you guys can follow along.
Yeah, I still see it.
I'm saying, awesome, great. So it's just on my end that it disconnected, great. So let's go from there in those 2 things. So if you look concretely at Power Apps, where do we get these 3 types of insights? Well, one is, for example, operational analytics. The place to get that, for example, is in the admin center. You get usage there, you get some of the performance results, you get some errors there. That stuff you can use definitely to get usage on your apps. There's a bit of a challenge here on the admin center that it's not necessarily app specific. So if you have multiple apps in one environment, this becomes much more complex, and there's probably a better way to go about it. If you want to learn more about behavioral analytics, out of the box, what you could use is Azure App Insights. And so that can learn you stuff like, how are my users coming in? What are they doing? What are the screens they're visiting, and so forth. But you can also have like funnels, like how do they go through a certain app? They come to the home page, and we lose a lot of people that actually click on create a new ticket, and then clicking the save a ticket is only like 0.6% in this case. Like to me, that could indicate, for example, an issue here, like, oh, we have a lot of people going to click create an app. This might not necessarily be a problem, because you always have to interpret, of course, where you're coming from and what else is on the home page. If there's 17 buttons on the home page and 44% clicks on create a new button, that's still a good thing. But if they go to create a new ticket and then are not actually able to save the ticket, that might indicate that there's an error, that there's some complexity or something they don't understand in completing that process. So funnels can be really useful in understanding how your people are behaving and where you might need to change something which is maybe too complex, maybe don't understand it, maybe there's an error. That's the next step of investigation for you. And then, of course, there's feedback itself. You could get that from your user community. You could talk to them. Maybe it's through bugs reported. Another popular way to do it is just build it into an app. So when someone clicks on the smile or unsmile, similar, like you see that in Office products too, is you pop up a little window and ask them, oh, I liked something, or I did not like something. I have a suggestion or something else, and then they can provide that feedback. That's a very common way that you can build that into all of your apps. You could turn this into a component and then use it as a standard component in all your apps, so that makers can really learn from their user community and that way improve and iterate their app. Great. So if you think about all of these, each of them has like one core metric. There's multiple things you can measure. But if I think about what we typically do and what is valuable for also Power Apps, I think for operational analytics, it's usage. Like, are people actually using my app? Is it valuable to go back and maintain it, make it better? What's the usage? Then there's the retention. Oh, they used it one time because when I send the notification that the app was now available for them, they can now use the app to maybe request time off, but they only did it once. They didn't come back, and the next time they're still using the old tool, or they're still going to the Excel file, or they're still sending an email to the HR team. Why are they not using the app, which we use to really automate it? That's retention. So that could indicate other issues like, okay, we use it once, but maybe they didn't see value, or that's really the challenges that you have as the next step. And then a commonly used one for feedback and what the value is there is the NPS. So Net Promoter Score, would they recommend it to someone else is a good indicator or what to think about it. So if you think about where to get all these things, I already mentioned Power Platform Admin Center, great place to kind of discover like usage. The thing is, it's per environment, not per app. So instead, you could use the Power Platform COE Starter Kit, which can give you usage per app. The thing is, it's quite a heavy tool to just get app usage. So there's another way to get app usage, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that's Azure App Insights. And I mentioned it just before as well. That can also give you usage very quickly and very easily, as we'll see. So there's actually 3 ways to get to active usage. But I want to be maybe add a little note there. If you start measuring this, if you start looking at it, think about if that's enough. Is it enough to kind of just measure usage? Like think about if the app that you have is really the first tile in the left rail on the Teams app, every time someone opens Teams, your app is going to be loaded and it's going to be measured as, oh, someone is using it. But actually, they didn't really use it. It just loaded the app and then they went somewhere else. What if it's on the default page as a start page? What if it's somewhere on a SharePoint page and so forth and so on? So think about, is usage enough? Maybe there's a more useful metric you want to look at. So we saw a good example with that in for the fans of maybe Silicon Valley, where they had this great celebration about, oh yeah, we have 500,000 installs of our apps, but then realized that their active usage was much lower and they're actually losing people. So always think about, okay, we're measuring this, but is this the right metric for us as well? Maybe I should be measuring the number of IDs submitted or the number of IDs voted upon. So you might be splitting per persona. We have people creating IDs and we have people like voting on IDs. Similar to YouTube, you have consumers and you have really the people who build the creatives that build the video. So you want to measure those separately. So think about what your app is, what your processes are, and start measuring those as well. The next one is retention. Is like, are people coming back? Is my product sticky? In this example, we often see it measured in retention charts or curves, and it really indicates like if we have like, for example, in week 0 here, early in 2012, in July 2012, 413 people came to the app. Like 1 month later, how many of those are still coming back? 2 months later, how many of them are still coming back? And so you can really see like the percentage, the drop off of people not coming back. Similar here in a different kind of visualization. It's more like an average. Hey, like if we started in week 0 with 100% of the people, after 1 month, only 80% is left. After 2 months, 70% is left, and so forth. So that's an important metric as well. Very simple example. If you look at the 2 products here, A and B, if you look at product A has new users for around 10,000, product B, 20,000. Like, which is the product that you would invest in here based on this information? If you simply look at this information, you're happy, like you're welcome to respond in IM if you'd like to make a guess. But usually when I ask this question, people are aware of like, oh, this is a trick question, and maybe it is because you need more information. Like just based on usage, you might say like, oh, definitely product B. Invest in product B. Much more new users per month, like it's a double amount of new users. But then if we bring in retention and we see just a retention difference of like 20%, with product A 85%, B 65%, then after 6 months, we see the users in total for product A is still smaller than for B. But after 24 months, we kind of changed it. So product A has much more users now, even though they're ranking up like a smaller amount, like half of the amount of new users per month. After 24 months, they ranked up much more users using, like, of course, in this case, a simplified method with a fixed retention rate. But that's why retention is so important. Are people coming important? That's why looking at usage alone is not enough. Find the right metric for your process, and then also look if they're coming back, or if they're going back to their alternative means. Maybe they're going back to the Excel file, maybe they're going back to the email. This could be really important for some areas or some processes where there is alternatives, or where they are not doing it at all. So that can play an important role in your organization as well. The challenge, though, with retention is it's hard to interpret. Like, what does it mean that they are dropping, and why are they dropping? And that's where funnels really come in and play a role as well, and which is much more easier, much more concrete, something you can do with, like, hey, if I'm looking at a certain process, where are users dropping? And you can look at this per process. Each of the processes could have their own funnel, and you can really look at, oh, it's dropping. Now, why is it dropping? Is it reliability? Is there an error? Is it a usability issue? Like, it's complexity in the UI. People don't know what to do. Check what the feedback is saying on the specific process and start looking at that. And you'll know based on, of course, knowing the process and then looking at what the numbers and the feedback is. So funnels, for me, one of the most useful ways to really address adoption in a more like scientific way, if you want. If you then look at, oh, maybe there's usability issues, I would just refer you to this website, grow.design. They have this nice list of like 101 cognitive biases and principles that can affect how users are interacting with your apps. So anytime you're building an app and you don't have this professional designer that's helping you and making sure that all these principles are respected, I find it really useful to kind of go and check, like, what are the things I'm doing maybe when I'm building the app that's going to lead to lower adoption and lower usage of my apps, or higher drops in the funnel. So very useful case. There's a few ones I called out here, but that's kind of where you should go and look at it. What is some of the technology that can help you gain those insights? For me, the quickest way to get everything, like usage, retention, like the funnels, anything, is using Azure App Insights. Now you might say, well, you're Microsoft, you're probably paid to do this. I just copied the screenshot to just highlight, like, hey, there's this free units included with your Azure account. So you can just go there and start using Azure App Insights for free. So you can try it out on a couple of apps. It's actually quite a lot of included capabilities for free. So that's something that you definitely want to look at, or if you want to try it out and see what you can learn from your apps with it. Super simple. Sign up on Azure, and then it's 4 steps. You go to the portal, you create a new Azure Application Insights kind of resource. Once that's created, it gives you an instrumentation key. You copy that, you go to your Power App, and on the app property, or on the app in the tree view in your pane there, you copy that key into the instrumentation key, you publish the app, and you're done. You have metrics. You will start having those metrics on your published app. I want to do one important thing. You only get metrics on the app which is published. So when you're going through the app in the studio, it's not sending those metrics to Azure App Insights. So make sure when you're trying this, that you actually publish the app and you run the app from the published location. So that's key. So very simple and very easy to get those insights. And there's so much information there. Like, if just very quickly, I have this resource here where you copy that key, you bring that simply into your app, as I said, and then on the app object, you have the instrumentation key, you paste it there, you publish your app, and you're done. You can start enjoying all those metrics. And just to give you an example, for example, here for the funnel, I kind of have the list of that inspection app in a funnel. I can look at that. I see that people are dropping here. I can see, like, okay, show me the converted users or the dropped users. And then I can look at the details for those users from anywhere. I can look at, give me more insights. It's just a treasure trove of information. I can look at the timeline. I can look at specific processes. I can see how they went through a certain session and what they did in that session. It's truly very valuable. And of course, I can do additional functions and features and functionalities on that afterward, like filters and so forth. So it's very, very valuable. You can even have information where you say like, oh, this is good. I want to know a user flow. Is like, how are people coming to the app? For example, they come in on the let's say the welcome page, and you want to know where they go after or before that. I could say something like all custom events and page views, create the graph, and then I can really see, okay, so if you look at the welcome screen, like all the people are coming this way into that screen, and from there, where are they going? So it's super useful to kind of learn what people are doing and where you can change your app to improve adoption that way. So very good and lots of insights in there. User feedback is really do it yourself. You create that control, you create that component, and then you kind of start learning. There's different ways you can just use Azure App Insights with tracing to store that information in Azure App Insight itself, or you could build something and store it in the Dataverse for Teams table, and then you can have Power Automate to send messages and do sentiment analysis and do whatever you want, do the full integration. You could simply have a link to a Microsoft Forms survey, and then again use Power Platform capabilities. This is really do it yourself. If you need something like this, it's building it. I quickly did it here in the app, where I build a component which is just I'm happy or I'm not happy, and by simply using trace of feedback and then providing the severity of the trace, and then whatever extra information I want to send, all that information is going to that same place, in this case using the trace, and with the instrumentation key, it's just going into the information here in App Insights, and I can go and look at that in detail if I wanted to. I'll quickly show it here, traces. And then we can look maybe where, because I had that trace statement that had feedback as a message, I'll just filter on that. And then I see like what people have been saying about the feedback, what have they been sending us feedback. And in my custom dimensions, I will see that extra information, like where did they send it from? What was the signal? Who was it that sent it? If like, at least if you allow that information to be shared. So that's kind of what you can really build in. So that's really coming from that very, very simple trace statement that we have here. So the message was feedback, the signal, the user, and the feedback location. So that's another way to leverage Azure App Insights. But again, many other ways to kind of go about that. The thing with the trace statement is it doesn't show as a custom event. So we saw like a minute ago that if we looked, and sorry for the back and forth here, what we saw in that information that I had, if I'm looking at, for example, users, there's filters I can use, and those filters are on like what type of events. So you can do custom events, you can page views, but tracing like the feedback kind of thing, hey, show me all the users that submitted feedback, is not an option here. So that's the only disadvantage in my opinion about the tracing, is you cannot really use it in all the other places to filter upon it. So I prefer to work in that case with custom events. Like here, the click form, hey, give me all the people that clicked on a specific element in a form, which is a custom event that I have in my app. The downside of that is that you need professional code for that. So you really need like actually 3 lines of code to kind of go to Azure App Insights and then send that custom event. So what I did was really build an Azure function, have that telemetry there, trace it or log it into Azure App Insights with a custom event, make that available as a custom connector, and then you can start using that in your app. And that's exactly essentially what I did here. So I have that custom connector, which is showing up here. And I can use custom connectors in Teams as well, as long as they're coming through Azure API management. And then I can really use that in my app wherever I want it. And the advantage is that you can then also really trace or filter on it in the information. So here on the form screen, I have a simple statement that calls that Azure connector, that custom connector I created. And then I provide, this is the event name, and this is the additional information I'm sending. And then you can really use it as if it was a built-in Azure App Insights event. So another great way to do that at a very high level there. So and then it's really done. You can start leveraging all those things. You've analyzed it. Now you go into IDs. You could use one of the built-in apps. We have a lot of templates that comes with Power Apps in Teams. There's the employee IDs template, which you could actually use to really start logging those IDs and then go from there, go forward into the different possibilities, into, okay, I'm doing these IDs, I'm prioritizing them according to whatever methods I have, and then you want to implement them. And you want to implement them with care. You want to not just change it maybe, unless you're really sure, but if you really want to show and scientifically prove that your change had an impact, the best way to do it is to do it A/B testing. You do, some group is getting the old version, another group is getting the updated version, and then you compare, you analyze the difference, and you test if it's valuable, if it made a difference, and if it made a difference, you can maybe complete the feature and ship it. Or if you see that it's actually not making a difference, maybe you don't have to invest more time into the ID that you had on that perspective. So with that, as you saw, there was lots of information. What I really wanted to provide is like just a seed for, hey, there's a lot of things that people like software companies are using in growth product management, in growth hacking, by looking at data, by looking at analytics and that kind of testing, what they believe can improve that. You should also use that in your Power Apps to really drive that user adoption and see how you can improve that. So for you guys, I think I just want to plant the seed. I hope you can take that seed forward and grow it in this amazing new app, which all of your users are using. So with that, I want to thank you for having me tonight. I know I'm the last, so thank you very much.
Well, that was amazing. Such good content. And I think John has really summed it up there. You know, he's going to struggle to sleep tonight. There's just so much we've packed into this event, and you've rounded it off beautifully. Thank you so much for coming along.
No, you're welcome. If anyone has questions after this, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help or go in more detail. It was a storm of new information maybe, and so I hope you can leverage it and grow it further from here.
I mean, that's always our aim, you know, new features, up and coming thoughts, how everybody else is approaching the Power Platform, and the stuff that, you know, is being updated and is just becoming more and more useful. So absolutely brilliant end to the session. Just really delighted with the speakers that we've had this time, and hope that you've all enjoyed the format of having smaller sessions but more of them, so that we can cover a lot more topics. So please do give us some feedback about that, and if you've got wonderful things to say like John has, please take that to the social media and let us know, and do tag in some of the speakers that you enjoyed the most. Again, Wim, first time we've had you here, but I can see you coming back many times. We would love to have you back to talk through more topics of the things that you're working on. That was fantastic.
Awesome. I'll be happy to be here.
Okay, so that's going to bring us to the end of the session. We were a little bit over, which is fantastic considering we had one speaker down. And if anybody was really looking forward, as I was, to the Azure Purview and the data governance with Power BI, we will be getting in touch with Prince and getting that session recorded, and we'll get it up there on the YouTube. And again, please like and subscribe our content. We really appreciate that subscribers get updates when we have a new event. We should have a new event coming up shortly, and we've already got some great interest from some great speakers. Look forward to seeing you then. Please do become a sponsor of the Cambridge Power Platform User Group. Details on the Patreon site.